Growing up in the North Side area, there was always a stigma. You wanted to kind of move out of the neighborhood to do better for yourself. And I always kind of thought, if you stay here and try to work with everybody, it will be better, and it has been better at this point.
I moved into the near North Side 22 years ago. So when I bought my house, I remember I showed my sister, I fell in love with the house. And I said, come see this house I'm gonna buy. She was like, why this house? Look at this neighborhood. What are you thinking? So, of course, I didn't listen to them, and I bought the house that I fell in love with. And it took me about 2 weeks to realize that the near North Side did not have the city services that I had when I lived in another neighborhood. We didn't have recycling at the time, and other neighborhoods had it. Our garbage, our trash pickup was very spotty. So I started working with the neighbors.
We're not a neighborhood with just problems. We're a neighborhood with a deep, rich culture. And that's the thing that we need to be celebrating.
Just got to get out there and block walk and talk to people. You're going to get people that don't even want to answer their doors or whatever. Just say okay and just keep going. Not everybody's going to want to hear it or give you the time of day, but you're going to come across that one person, and that one person is going to uplift you from the people that maybe said no to you. And that was happening a lot around here for a long time. People were just going to work, school, home, and they weren't getting involved.
And so it was just so enlightening when Go Neighborhood started, because we all came together and saw that we were in the same boat.
The comprehensive community development approach is really the recognition that everything in a neighborhood is connected. At the core, though, is the people and the people's relationships with each other and how they come together to maintain those relationships, but also maintain the pulse of the neighborhood, talk to each other, continually determine what are our priorities, what do we want to see, what do we want to do, how do we take care of ourselves and each other, and then working towards that together. In the beginning of Go Neighborhoods, the expectations were that we were in pilot mode. We were testing this idea. And so in the near North Side, Avenue was selected and supported as the convening agency for the community. And they were charged with doing community engagement for about 6 months. And that really was starting with one-on-one interviews. And the community ended up doing 150 one-on-one interviews. And that sourced data about what were the priorities for the community, but it also sourced all the relationships that everything was built on.
The strategy was really just to go out and talk to neighborhood residents and community leaders and just listen. We didn't want to come in with a particular agenda of what was important or what should be worked on. We really wanted to hear what people's concerns were, what they saw as needs in the neighborhood. It's really inspiring to see the amazing changes that have taken place in the community, from some very modest beginnings, community cleanups, parks safety projects, to some really incredible accomplishments like the rebuilding of Northside High, a project that residents really came together and fought for when it looked like the high school was not going to get the rehabilitation that the community had been promised.
As soon as I heard about the concept, I was like, I know how to make that work, and I want to be a part of that. Go Neighborhoods was about, experimenting with how do you weave together a social fabric that can hold everyone in a place of belonging and safety, where the community is really getting what they need and being honored for the beauty of who they are. One question was like, what makes your heart sing? It was a question about connecting with the human, not for a project. It was never really about we have a goal of something that we want to do, but it was really truly about how do we connect with this human and find what lights them on fire so that we can connect all those fires together. And so organizing is that. It's finding what inspires people, what drives people, what passions they have, what griefs they have, what stories they have, and trying to ask the right questions that help them know that all of that matters and that their voice and that them leaning into a civic space is important and can make a difference. And so community organizing is really just about inspiring hope and watching hope kind of take over.
Some people like to come to meetings and plan and talk, and other people just like to do things. So it helped folks to engage in a variety of ways. It helped Avenue and others identify leaders with tons of potential who could do more and who were interested in doing more. And it also showed visible early changes in the neighborhood so people would believe in this and it would create momentum, that they knew that Go Neighborhoods was something different, that they were leading it and they were seeing the change very quickly in their community, and that it was really sky's the limit kind of process. If you could dream it, you could do it, and there were some resources to support it.
The next step after our one-on-one meetings with a lot of neighborhood residents was to move into a full-fledged planning process to talk about the vision that the community had for the future of their neighborhood and how they were going to make that vision into a reality. And that all culminated in the creation of what we call the Quality of Life Agreement. We wanted to call it an agreement because nothing would make it into the document unless there was a person or an organization or a group of people who were really committed to making it happen. 175 projects were completed in the neighborhood. More than $53 million was leveraged on these projects that involved almost 20,000 people. And on the second agreement, we really looked at systemic issues in the neighborhood, still focusing on the same strategies as the first Quality of Life Agreement, but really getting more quantitative in terms of how we wanted to address these issues.
When Go Neighborhood started, that was one of their goals, was to reinstate the Super Neighborhood Council, and that's what they did. And they had delegates, not just from civic clubs, but from stakeholders. And stakeholders were business owners, and they were influential residents. They were part of the schools, the churches, nonprofits. Go Neighborhoods also started a Chamber of Commerce for the Near North Side, and they were involved in the Super Neighborhood. So I think one of the most important things was that it brought these civic clubs together. And besides just the mechanics of getting it set up, we had to prove we were legit. We had to make something happen. And one of the first things we did was write a letter to City Council about some of the city services that were being neglected in the neighborhood. And that simple act of writing a letter and signing it as a whole super neighborhood we had more influence and made a huge impact on every resident in the Near North Side.
The energy's got to come from up. It can't come from down. And so if we come up with ideas that we decide are going to be good for the neighborhood, but the neighborhood is not in the least bit interested, then we need to step away and relook at the solution that we came up with.
One-on-one relationship building in action looks like a lot of meetings and a lot of people talking to each other. And it's not sexy, it's hard work because we're all humans and we're all busy, and you have to create time for it and you have to prioritize it. And I think the other hardest thing for people to do is to listen.
My dad always told me is that you got to be happy with your surroundings. You got to make it better, and you got to strive for whatever you can. I just kind of focused on my one area, and right now that takes me back home in Lindale Park. We started a development that's called Love Lindale, and it started out with somebody picking up trash along Irvington and Helmers with a bag and just picking up their trash. So then it kind of flourished into getting a couple of people let's clean up your block. And from there, now we have t-shirts that say Love Lindale, and we meet every other month to do a cleanup. I think you tell somebody that hasn't got involved, or maybe they're too busy at the time, is they all have something that they want to give back. It's just, how do they get there?
Kettleson got a grant with helping out with Go Neighborhoods, and I don't know if it was the city or not, and we did the Spark Park at Kettleson. Coach G calls me and he says, "Hey Dale, you think you can come over to the park and help us plant these trees?" And I said, "Sure, can I come over? Not only can I come over and bring everybody, bring my family, my husband, my kids, because I have big boys." And we all went out there and we dug holes for trees, and so now the trees are there, and that's already been a long time. And I tell myself, we can have something to be proud about, that, you, Jonathan, planted that tree right there, and we all helped out.
The Robert E. Lee Elementary School. I just loved that school. And then I learned that it had been a school for over 100 years. It had never stopped being a school for 100 years. So the Robert E. Lee building, because it had asbestos and lead and all this bad stuff, it sat there forever. The county had the building now, and that county commissioner was going to destroy the building and build an amphitheater. And I just didn't see how an outdoor amphitheater right next to the freeway was going to work. So with Jennifer and Go Neighborhoods, we thought we would rally the troops and try to preserve the building. I thought the rally would kind of be a flop because we wouldn't get that many people. And there were over 150 people, all of them with big mouths, all of them on a mission to preserve that building. And at the end of the day, that's what happened. And now we have the Castillo Center. It's always been a community center until this year, 2021, it's going back to being a school. And so it just warms my heart to, I'm starting to get a little emotional to know that building, even though the name has changed and the structure has changed a lot, the facade is still there and its purpose is still there. Now I realize that it's not the building. It is what the people inside the building will do 10 years down the road that will make a difference. You never know what someone seeing you try to take action and try to make things better, how that can impact and inspire them to do those things maybe somewhere else.
What has been so fulfilling over the years is to see that the idea worked and that it's really getting back to the basics of putting the community first in community development, and to just see people take it and run with it to create the neighborhood that they want and to keep the parts of the neighborhood that they love, and then to build the new things that will help them reach their full potential.
It's a lot of sacrifice, I think, that people made, but they made it with this goal of making sure that their community was a better place for them and for all of their neighbors. So I find that really inspiring, that people are willing to go beyond their own self-interest and work towards these community goals that are benefiting everybody.
Most people don't know, and when you layer all the different things that were about to happen to the Near North Side, we knew that the threat of gentrification and displacement of this historic community was not just a maybe, but was very likely unless we acted in really big and bold ways to try to figure out how to slow it, how to stop it where we could, and get lots of people involved so that they at least had a place at the table. in Go Neighborhoods, you have that opportunity to learn what are the basics that it takes to have a functioning democracy, right? It takes coming together and understanding our shared needs and our shared desires and figuring out how we can accomplish those together. And so what we saw on the Near North Side was, you know, they started with little projects like a playground, which isn't little, but that was like a little project. And then they got hungrier and hungrier and hungrier, and now they're taking on TxDOT and I-45.
One thing I think I got power from was meeting the elected officials, getting to know them. Because when I have a real bad problem and I feel like I'm getting past the buck, I'll call them. I'll call them and it works.
Seeing something finished. I mean, people have ideas and they're great ideas, but you got to follow through. And if you don't follow through, they're just ideas. You have to have dreams. You have to have dreams for the future. It's very important to know where you're from. It's because those are your roots. And if you don't take care of that, you really don't have anything.
You know, success builds upon success. And once you have one success, you feel a little emboldened to go out and try for something even bigger. We are definitely listened to now, whereas before we didn't have a voice and no one understood how to have a voice or what an impact having a voice would have. And that great old house brought me to some great people and great relationships and some great knowledge and great understanding of how things work. That is the thing that I'm most proud of, is the relationships that I've got from this whole endeavor of trying to organize the neighborhood. It's the people.